running out of faith. Be careful who you tell. I'm running out of faith. Be careful who you tell. Whoa, whoa.
This is Infants on Thrones. The philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the core.
Hi everyone, I'm Bob Caswell and you are listening to Infants on Thrones. So today you're going to hear from yours truly and from a good friend of mine, Logan Beaux. Now, Logan and I host another podcast called Practically Culture, and we love to review movies and TV shows and talk about all things pop culture in that sphere. So this past week we decided that we just could not see Noah.
Are you not entertained?
I mean, we both grew up Mormon, and a movie based on Noah was just too much to pass up. We just had to watch it, we had to review it, talk about it, and we did all this in the context of religion in general and Mormonism specifically. Those topics can't not come up when you're talking about a movie about Noah. Although we pretty much kept the review spoiler-free, I just want to say, well, what's really to spoil here? It's a story about Noah. We're just here to help you out, guide you to an understanding of whether or not this movie is really for you. Just think of us as like a movie-centric Holy Ghost. But you don't need to pray. There's no prayer required. We're just going to lead you, guide you, metaphorically walk beside you. I don't know. We just already know what you need to know about this movie, and that's what we're here to share. And one last thing, be sure to stick around for the end because, well, we have a little conversation about whether or not bringing Mike on the podcast is a good idea since, he just was on the podcast for this very topic, how Mormonism deals with Noah, and Logan had some feedback to share that wasn't entirely positive.
Glenn at least apologized for the quote-unquote treating Mike like a piñata while it was going on, so that's, something.
So is bringing on someone like Mike, someone who's an old school, hardcore active, true believing, willing to talk Mormon, is that a good voice to represent Mormonism? Or should we just really admit that it's not much more than a circus act?
Is this not why you are here?
Listen in and tell us what you think.
All right. Noah. A man is chosen by God to undertake a momentous mission of rescue before an apocalyptic flood destroys the world. Starring Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, Anthony Hopkins, and Emma Watson. Directed by Darren Aronofsky, written by Darren Aronofsky, and Ari Handel. Do you have a mini review for us, Bob?
I do. Okay, Noah. Here's what I have to say. Such a waste of production value and acting. Ironically, yeah, already coming, not too good, right? Yeah, ironically, I think it's as good as this story can be on the big screen. If only most of the subject matter wasn't so nonsensical, contradictory, and unrelatable. 2.5 out of 5.
All right. Are you ready for mine?
Yeah, let's hear it.
My mini review of Noah. Weird. That's about it. But very Aronofsky-esque. How about somewhere between 1 to 5 out of 5 stars? Is that fair? Okay, if pressed, I guess I'd say 3.5 out of 5.
Wow, that high for a Logan who's normally, harder core on the negative side than Bob in the aggregate anyway?
Yeah, but don't forget about the pretentious factor. I'm a little higher than you on that usually.
That's true.
Are you a fan of Darren Aronofsky's work usually, Bob?
Well, I've only really seen one other. I think it's just Black Swan, and I haven't seen his earlier stuff. And I had mixed feelings about Black Swan, but they leaned on the positive side more to your rating here, whereas the mixed feelings on this movie lean me to the negative slightly. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've seen Black Swan, which I actually liked. I mean, the trademark trippiness of Darren Aronofsky, I think, really worked in Black Swan. And the only other one I've seen from him is The Fountain with Hugh Jackman. And that was hard for me to really access, actually. And it felt... I guess Noah is a little bit more on the hard-to-access side of things, even though not quite as far as The Fountain. But it's like there's so much coming at you visually, and they don't really connect the dots. They just have like these distant archipelagos of ideas instead of a landmass or something, if that metaphor makes any sense. And I think it actually might be easier to process on a second viewing. Is just whether or not I want to actually sit through it a second time to see if that would be the case. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that does feel like an Aronofsky sort of stylistic choice where you're kind of depleted by the end of watching one of his movies, of the two I've seen, and you're like, oh, there was a lot there that I could parse out, and that really intrigues me and excites me in some ways, but it's filled in with so much other heaviness that, like, this is probably the only time I'm ever going to see this, I don't think.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was a lot different than the Noah in the story I thought I knew as a kid. Right? I mean, and I think a decent part of the extra info came from like esoteric Jewish sources like the Midrash and the Kabbalah. I mean, I only have this most tangential knowledge of that material, but I swear they mentioned like Zohar a couple times, which if I remember right is very Kabbalistic. And I think that snake skin that went from Lamech to that evil king guy to, well, I mean, I'm not going to spoil things, I guess, so I won't describe its full path, but that seems like an esoteric Jewish thing. And actually, it almost seems like an esoteric Hugh Nibley Mormon teachings my dad likes reading about thing, too.
Yeah, so I guess that falls all that falls under the category of artistic license, right? But I kind of liked it in the sense that it sort of highlights that the Bible, for all of its mainstreamness, is just one of many sources for this story, and it's not any more relevant in terms of a truth claim to being more accurate than any other additional source material from other areas, right? So I kind of liked how he sort of didn't lend the Bible version the most credibility versus all the other versions, and he just sort of told it all together.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it's not as relevant or not necessarily more significant, the Bible version, yes and no. I mean, artistically and creatively, no. But I think that the studio had in mind when they greenlit this project something that evangelical Christians would like rent out whole screenings of in movie theaters. But it turned out not to really capture that market so much.
No, it totally wasn't a sellout. That is for sure.
Although I think it did win the weekend, right? It just wasn't.
It sure did, and it's going to probably make its money back because it has a lot of controversy around it for that very factor. And typically, or so far, it's getting good reviews, but of course, reviewers lean more liberal than evangelical, if those are the two spectrums in life.
Yeah, so let's talk about the movie instead of just what's going on, external to the movie. This Noah was, and I kind of like this actually, but it was very much this ancient Bronze Age tribal nomad with this very ancient sense of morality. I mean, his visions, they were super confusing and sometimes drug-fueled, and not these clear directives that we assume he had in Sunday school when you're sitting there. Like, the Lord came down and he had, like, this document. Read this, Noah. Ask me any questions if you have. Let's make sure we're clear. That's not at all what it was. He just sort of tried to figure it out. And I actually sort of liked that take on what it means to be a prophet and try to interpret the will of the Lord.
Yeah, I liked it if it stuck with that, but this is where the contradictory aspect comes in for me, and I don't know if this is the time to get nitpicky, but I'll just say...
Nitpick away.
Yeah, that aspect of having things be hazy, and God was always referred to as the creator, and you never actually see him.
Good job, the creator, that's right.
Yeah, and Noah has to figure things out, but like... You can't have it both ways, right? You can't have very specific direction from God for how things are going to work out in terms of building an ark and getting animals on it and putting them to sleep, and the logistical challenge of I'm pretty sure indoor plumbing would come before what Noah was able to accomplish with this task. And so I'm just saying God's either directing that very specifically or that none of this would have ever happened, or we would have had a very different story because it was just too literally shown how everything worked out at the same time as having key plot points that were like Noah totally getting it wrong. And it's like, you can't get everything right for the part of the story that we remember that was right, and then get some other stuff so badly wrong, and have it be the same source material, have it be the same God. Either that or God makes no sense is the takeaway from the movie.
Yeah, well, no sense. That I feel like that was a huge theme because it was very confusing and trippy and seemingly pointless at times. And a lot of their morality and their values, it was very important to these people, but it was very foreign to my own view at times. And they didn't really explain. For example, early on, we see an animal being hunted for food. And Noah's so pissed at the three guys doing the hunting that he gets into a fight with them and he ends up killing them. And I'm sitting there like, wait, was Noah some early PETA activist? Was that a special sentient animal I've never heard of? Is there some other reason it's a crime to hunt for food in ancient times? I didn't get that early scene.
I didn't get it either, and you're even leaving out the contrast that makes it even worse. So the movie opens with this scene where there's a kid picking a flower. One of Noah's kids, and Noah, like, from 20 feet away, does this, about face, and he's like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I saw you pick that flower. Everything has a place in this world. Did you need to pick that flower?" "It was pretty. I'm a little kid. Leave me alone." Why is everything so serious? And it's 30 seconds into the movie. I picked a flower, for fuck's sake. and then Noah, like, after teaching his son a life lesson for why you shouldn't pick flowers unless you have some greater good for that act of violence towards the earth, goes off and kills 3 people for hunting an animal. It's just like for food. And it's just like, what are the rules here? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys?
Exactly.
All that's thrown out.
I mean, it's this ancient morality that I don't quite relate to, but all that was just a warm up to the main event of Noah seeming to go completely off the deep end when it comes to fulfilling his responsibility from the Creator. I mean, that was bizarre to me. Just the way he's off in left field. Everyone's like, "Dude, you're getting this wrong." But he just has this one idea in his head, and I won't spoil it, but he's alone there, and everyone's super pissed at him, but it's like, no, this is what I need to do. I just didn't get Noah at all.
Yeah, I didn't either, because on the one hand, everyone kind of goes with him down this path for creating the ark, but then he just takes it to the next level in a lot of other scenes where supposedly he's getting direction from God or the Creator, but everyone else, there's like, okay, we built an ark and put animals on it, and that seemed to make sense, but now where you're going doesn't make any sense at all, and Noah doesn't have a good explanation. So I don't think this is a spoiler, but I just want to point out that the purpose of Noah getting all the animals on the ark and having it so that only he and his family can be on the ark is because humanity needs to die and animals need to live. And that's the whole point of the Creator's divine mission. And then it just spirals downward from there because we get more finite aspects of the way things need to happen to make sure that this plan is fulfilled to its, ultimate glory of what the Creator wants. And that's what I don't get, is the Creator is very specific enough to fulfill Noah getting on the boat and figuring it all out when it comes to the logistics of all of that. But then the movie goes on and on with how Noah gets it wrong on pretty much anything beyond having the boat be on the water.
Well, I mean, you say he gets it wrong, but we see his visions, and he sees this mountain a lot, and he sees the snake and the Garden of Eden with the apple, and he stands in this pool of blood. But he interprets that in a certain way, but I think he doesn't get anything more than we get, and so it's hard to say what exactly the Creator wants and doesn't want.
It really is, and is it just me, or was this whole movie very dark and depressing in terms of where humanity had progressed to at this stage? It was very hunter-gatherer-esque. There weren't very many organized. I mean, there were organized groups of people, but they were bloodthirsty, evil people, and that's the only time we ever saw anything resembling humanity coming together was the evil side. But otherwise, it's just it's Noah and his family, and then a grandfather, and it's where's the rest of humanity? You're either in the bloodthirsty pact of kill everything, or you're Noah and his family.
Well, I feel like that's vaguely biblical, right? I mean, in the Bible, everyone in the world has gone so completely evil that the Creator is going to destroy humanity, right? I mean, that's just sort of one of the premises of this story, if you're going to tell it at all, I feel like.
I suppose so, but I mean, I feel like part of being evil is like more than living in a swampland and tripping over dead bodies. It's like, isn't there like parts of being evil that's like building gold? And like, I was expecting some beautifully constructed something or rather where evil people are hanging out and good people are jealous of that or something. But
I guess that's the version of Mormonism. That's what we always think of being evil, huh?
Right, is idolatry, or
having a great time
they're
while
having
the
a
good
good
people
time.
look on jealously, left out.
Right. Yeah.
Was the Noah story a meaningful one for you growing up when you were more Mormon than you are today?
Not so much. I mean, it was there. Mormonism has this concept of dispensation heads where, every 1,000 years there's like a big person who's in charge of that part of history that's relevant, and it all culminates to the present day because it revolves around us and the restoration of the gospel through Joseph Smith. So Noah is definitely one of like the 7 or 8 pillars of history that's important, but there's nothing behind it. It was always just that one. Even Adam and Eve was a little more relevant because it felt like it had more meatiness to it in terms of long-lasting consequences and how it affected me as a person. But the Noah story was always kind of a weird one. It was like, wait, so God created man and the earth and all that in the creation story, and then pretty early on, it didn't go as planned, and he had to start over. Why is that relevant? Why do we care? I guess that's an interesting story. But what else is there to it? Anything? Oh,
Yeah.
Animals on a boat. Okay, now what?
And it sort of fell into the category, the Bible's a word of God as long as it's translated correctly. Just like one of those easy things. Doesn't make sense, moving on. Because I agree, like a lot of those early Testament stories, Noah was not a big one in any of my studies or contemplations or anything like that. Like I mentioned earlier, I actually eventually end up delving into some esoteric Jewish teachings, which I thought was pretty cool and had a lot of material to go through. And when I was like an institute teacher and bringing these things in, like, hey, check out what the Jews say about Noah. On the other hand, that period of my life wasn't very long, and I sort of gave that up as I stopped going to church much anyway. But
Yeah.
but I don't have like this nostalgic pull towards anything about Noah. If it had been a Book of Mormon movie that was equally bizarre, one that I tried to construct a testimony around and taught for 2 years on my mission or something, I might feel more of a personal interest in the outcome. But I was able to just take my, objective distance from this one.
Yeah, and Mormonism has this get out of jail free card with that 8th article of faith of like, we believe in the Bible as long as it was translated correctly. And all that means is like, we believe in it until we don't, and we're not agreed on exactly where those lines are for every story, but we all agree that there are lines, and we just don't want to talk about them because they're different for everyone.
Yeah.
And Noah's one of those. Noah is like a classic example of like, you put that story on the big screen, and nobody is going to agree with you 100% on the way you're showing it, because everybody's got their own little version in their head of what's true.
Yeah, so do you know any Mormons who've seen it yet? I imagine they could say, oh, that was an interesting take. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
moving on.
I don't know any active Mormons. I did have a conversation with some, shall we say, less active, inactive ex-Mormons, and they actually liked it more than I did, which was surprising. I almost wanted to get them on the show and just to talk about it, because okay, so this is a little bit of a tangent, but I want to say that there's a part of me that does like Noah a lot because the blurred line aspects of what's real from the Bible that's supposedly holy versus what's artistic license. It just shows that it's all bullshit. There's like, you can't really parse it out and be like, this 5 minutes of the movie makes sense, and then this 5 minutes, I can't believe they put in rock giants. It's like, well, if you think about it, it's not really that much weirder than the other 5 minutes that to you is the word of God. I don't understand. So that's the other aspect of this that I liked / didn't like. But where was I going with that? That's a tangent.
Yeah, on that, just arbitrary sort of category sorting. One thing I was impressed with was just that little incense that put all the animals to sleep. Like, oh, that's a good idea. That would have helped a ton. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, until you think it through, and then you're like, oh, but they're not asleep for a period of time when they'd all be eating each other somehow. It's great that that's how this is going to work out. God has a special incense that puts animals to sleep for a very specific amount of time that they can then be woken up later, like every animal's a bear hibernating for the winter.
Yeah, well, Iron Age recounting of Bronze Age stories, that I don't really expect them to be too literal. I expect them to be quite metaphorical, to the extent that anything can be drawn from them. Little details like that.
Yeah.
Don't bother me. I guess I just assume them all to be suspect.
Right. Yeah.
What about the performances? Anything to say about the acting?
It was good, but it was like when it was at its best, it was also misdirected, and that was part of the problem. Like, for instance, Jennifer Connelly, toward the end especially, has a few, for your consideration, almost Oscar-worthy type performances, which would be amazing if this movie was A Beautiful Mind, and it was...
That's true, it's those two actors again.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. They're husband and wife again. And you see the progression of somebody's life that you can relate to, even if, I guess in that movie, the character was a genius, but he also had other issues, and you felt for him. In this movie, Noah just is not relatable, and what they're fighting over is just like one big misunderstanding that doesn't make any sense, and it's just weird. It's just like it's like attending somebody's couples therapy, and it's you can't really. It's the word I'm looking for is super manufactured. It's like, really, you guys, like this is the problem that you're trying to overcome with this much drama and emotion. I just saw 12 Years a Slave. Now that's something, there's just more real connections and so many other subject matters that here it was just so manufactured to the point where I couldn't take the performances seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it plenty already, but it was really hard to relate to a lot of the moral dilemmas. They didn't seem like moral dilemmas. They seemed like pure insanity.
Right, just arbitrary bad decisions. Like, you made a good decision before, just do that again. Why is it hard this time around?
If I were to single someone out as being particularly good, I'd actually want to give a shout out to Emma Watson, of all people.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, she does a good job as the younger daughter / love interest / but to the credit of the story, to the extent that it deserves any credit, she had one of the few believable things that you could relate to, especially in that time. I think we all understand that if you her character can't have children, and she really struggles with that, and that's like a universal theme. Whereas most of the other themes for the other characters are like bizarrely constructed, insane ones, right? So
the story probably helped her out, but she had a lot of different roles, from like teenage girlfriend, adopted daughter. But I especially liked the scene, when sort of culminated and how things went down between her and Noah near the end. But I don't know. Great job out of her. She's really establishing herself as like a real actor, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. That's true.
So we've talked about this for a while now. Anything more you want to say?
I guess I don't think I can recommend it, but I kind of want people to see it because I think it's a fun thing to talk about. This is a good dinner party conversation movie. Like, it's good for that reason. And it does have a lot of flashes of artistic flair that's hard to describe that I really enjoyed. Like, there's one point where they're all on the ark together, and Noah sits his family down and he's like, "Let me tell you a story." And if I couldn't get out of my head the fact that the reaction of the younger kids especially would be like, "Dad, we already heard this story. It's the only story you have. Adam and Eve, come on."
I mean, he basically bites that bullet. It's like, the first story I heard, the first story I told you, the first story I told you, the first story I told you. Yeah, so you're right. I'm sure they were rolling their eyes.
Yeah, instead of like super interested in the only story I know. But then when the flashbacks happen and the way we see the Adam and Eve story, I mean, and the creation story, a lot of that stuff in isolation, I was like, I like this 5 minutes or this 10 minutes, but like as part of the larger narrative and the overall point of the movie, it didn't save it for me. The movie's still pointless, pretty much. So see it if you want to have a fun conversation with somebody else who's seen it. But otherwise, pass.
All right, that works for me. We'll leave it at that.
There's a madman looking at you and he wants to take your soul. There's a madman with a mad plan, and he's dancing at your door. Oh, what to do? Ooh, what to do when the walls are built to crumble? There's a madman with a mad plan, and he waits for us to stumble. Ooh, but our eyes are open. Yeah, they're really open.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about recording something Noah related for Infants on Thrones. I mean, actually, I had some serious objections to the last episode. I should maybe declare conscientious objector on this one or something.
Ooh. Well, as you know, we love critical feedback. Well, I don't know why I said it that way.
Really? Do you? Okay, sure.
Do you know that? Is that the way it is? Who knows? But all I know is whatever you have to say now, I want to hear it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've talked before about Mike episodes especially, and just along that line, I really didn't like it. One thing I will say, Glenn at least apologized for the quote-unquote treating Mike like a piñata while it was going on. So that's, something. And I will admit, it sounds like my private objections about any time you have Mike on, when I pretty much say the exact same thing. It may have propagated through and reached Glenn's ears to some extent. I don't know how much you bring that up, even though I shake my fists every time it seems to happen.
It's funny because whenever I bring something up, I'll do it like in some sort of obscure, like, there's some friends of mine, there's some feedback I've gotten. And he's like, you mean Logan said that? I'm like, and then I'm just honest with him. I'm like, no, that wasn't Logan on that one. But then when it is, I'm like, oh yeah, that was Logan.
That's funny. That's funny. But I should give Glenn points for trying to be self-aware. But
for sure.
He doesn't get out of the hook so easily. I mean, the whole purpose of the episode, including the framing, including the intro and the little wrap up at the end, and definitely the, if you don't want to see Mike get beat like a piñata, stop here. You're warned. It's it's on you if you go further than here. Like, yeah, right. But anyway, whatever. But the whole purpose of that is that it seems to be just to bring on Mike and say, look at this guy. Can you believe how stupid he is to believe thus and such or this and that? It seems like he's being turned into like this circus act.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like there are some similarities here to what you're saying to some of the criticism or feedback I've given myself toward the Krista psychic episodes. You feel like this is kind of just another flavor of the same. Mike is just like a different version of the Krista problem.
That's actually a really good comparison. Yeah, it's a really good comparison. For some reason, I get a little, energized a little bit more about Mike, but it's pretty much the same thing as Krista, because you're right. Glenn, he sits there and acts like, oh, I'm so interested in what Krista has to say. But it's like, really? You're really just showcasing her and making fun of her behind her back while you act interested to her face. And then you go, this chick, you'll never believe what she said. It's so ridiculous. Ha ha ha.
Well, that's certainly closer to what I do, but I don't feel bad about it because, of course, I'm not the one who is showcasing her because I think it's a bad idea in the first place. So I just give myself a free pass of thinking it's ridiculous after the fact. But yes, so the intriguing thing about the Mike episodes are that he typically likes them. For example, this is kind of inside baseball type stuff, but he emailed Glenn, I believe, after this episode, because Glenn shared with the rest of us, and it was just like, yeah, I love the final edit. It really came together well. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? How did you love that? How are you, what are you listening to that's not what I'm listening to? I was gritting my teeth and feeling bad for you, through most of it. Not that there's winners or losers and there's ones, it's not like a official, debate style podcast where the audience votes at the end or something, but I'm pretty sure if we did that, Mike would not look good.
Well, that's interesting. And it just sort of, I guess I don't know what to do with that. On the one hand, it makes Mike seem like just a super nice guy. I guess he's being persecuted in the name of the Lord or something like that, and he sort of enjoys it. I don't know. And, while it's just us chickens here, I suppose I should actually not pick on Glenn too much. It's other people who really lay into Mike a ton. I guess for Glenn, just that long intro that sort of sets him up as this intentional literalist is sort of the part that seems to be putting him on display like a circus act. So it's subtler. It's definitely subtler, not overt, and it's not like a piñata. It's not treating Mike like a piñata, I guess, but I don't know. I guess I fume in my chair here as I listen to that.
So how do you think it could be improved, or do you think Mike should just be off limits because he's not really representative of anything Mormon to the extent that he's not a good part of the sample size that is Mormonism necessarily, even though he is, but he isn't. Should it be hands off, or should it just be handling it differently?
Good question. You want me to get constructive here? I was just ranting. Okay, so here's I guess what I would say. I mean, because it didn't feel like it was really set up to be, you know, an honest debate with like the best possible positions on each side coming together, and they would collide with each other, and some, you know, greater truth would emerge. It didn't seem to be that, and it also didn't seem to be like just, you know, it's really interesting, Mike. You know all this stuff, but you still have a testimony. Explain this to us. And, you know, you can only have so many episodes of doing that with Mike, I suppose. But I guess what I would say is don't bring Mike on and hold him up as like this super scholar, super sophisticated sort of person who can answer all the ex-Mormon objections and stuff like that. Because he bears testimony and he's read a lot of Hugh Nibley, I guess. And that's cool, but it I don't know. Just holding him up that way, I think, just is intended to make him look ridiculous, and that's sort of the thing that gets on. So I guess, as I'm just talking out of my ass here, it would just be to bring him on in lower stake situations. I don't know. I guess that's for me.
Yeah, that makes sense, because it's so easy to grab Mike because he's willing to give an answer to everything. Like the standard Mormon wouldn't come on the show to fill that role because they wouldn't have answers to the majority of the stuff that's flung at them. And that's sense. That's why Mormons don't do the other side of podcasting with ex-Mormons. But then Mike comes on and says things like, "Oh, Noah was at a dinner party," and it's just like a huge laugh because Mike is saying that like it's like an honest answer of a probable...
I was trying to find my references, but it talks about how when the flood actually came, Noah was at a dinner party, and that's when you receive the revelation.
So did he leave the people at the party? Like, oh, okay.
He did. He left the people at the party, got his family.
Screw you guys.
Dude, he's a horrible host, man. He's hosting a dinner party and he just bails.
It makes no sense whatsoever, but the way... It does. It's just funny, but it's also like, I don't know that he realizes that that's just ridiculous.
But it's funny, but it sort of has the spirit of truthiness to me. I mean, whatever Bronze Age dinner parties I may have had, I mean, the fact that it may not have been a literal, you know, Upper East Side dinner party, that's not that relevant to me. I don't know why he got such a hard time. It was super funny, but like not stupid. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, but... I don't know. I just think that there aren't answers, and there isn't a Mormon that's willing to talk and to admit that there aren't answers. They're either the Mormons who don't want to talk about it, or that when they talk, they're like Mike, and I guess Mike is a sample of one, because I don't know anybody else like this, where they have an answer to everything. It's just kind of scary.
Hey guys, this is Glenn, and... well, I feel like I probably should add some clarification here, because I honestly bristled a bit when I heard Logan claim that I'm only pretending to be interested in Krista the Psychic, but I'm really just putting her out there for public ridicule. Now, that's mildly offensive to me. Both anyone who would do that sort of thing in the first place, and then that Logan thinks that I'm one of them. But if Logan's confused about my intentions there, then others of you probably are as well. So, at the risk of hijacking the excellent movie review on Noah, let me make a few comments here regarding the meta part of the previous discussion. Because Bob and I talked about this, and he wants to know how a Dawkins Scale 6 de facto atheist so comfortable with the eternal dial tone Glenn can also be a having multiple conversations with Krista the Psychic is totally fascinating and worthy of hours of my time, Glenn. So I'll answer that, or at least I'll try. But first, regarding Mike. Yeah, you guys are right. Of course, it's a circus sideshow. It's entertainment. He's an entertaining guy and an infuriating guy. And don't get me wrong here, you know, we don't bring him on to get higher ratings or anything like that. But when he is on, there's usually a bit of a spike. People can't look away from a train wreck, right? But I also genuinely just enjoy talking to him. And I always have. He He reminds me of my dad, in a way. You know, they have a similar approach to Mormonism. So even if I don't agree with him on hardly anything, or think that his source of information has the same authority or validity that he does, he still offers a counterpoint to my own. And that makes me think. And I like to think, and consider, and explore. For example, there was this moment in the Noah discussion where I asked him why God couldn't just lift Noah and the animals like he did with Enoch in the city of Noah.
Because Enoch and his people were actually translated and filled with glory. And, you know, they became a different type of being.
So they couldn't come back after the flood and procreate and continue the line of humanity and mortality.
Correct.
Nice. Okay.
That's why Methuselah they were excited. It says Methuselah had a lot of pride because he knew that Noah would become from his posterity.
And apparently he also really, really likes berries and looks a lot like a 900-year-old Hannibal Lecter. But this is what I'm talking about. Mike reminded me that translated beings are no longer mortal. He reminded me of that internal Mormon logic that I had overlooked. And I just love that kind of stuff. I love exploring other people's ideas and seeing how they make sense of the world, even when those ideas are so foreign and oftentimes ultimately unacceptable to my own worldview. So in that sense, I totally agree with you, Bob. There is a connection to be made between Mike and Krista the Psychic. But it's not because I'm disingenuously pretending to be interested in them while really secretly putting them up on a pedestal for public ridicule. If you think that that's who I am, then you really don't know me very well. Or maybe you just think I'm full of shit. Either way, you can believe what you want, but just like I genuinely value talking to Mike, in small doses, I also genuinely enjoy talking to Krista. She has these out-of-the-box, interesting ideas. She surprises me. I'll ask her a question, and I'll be expecting one thing, and I'll get something back that I had never even thought of before. Now, let me give you an example, and this may infuriate some of you, but I found it simultaneously surprising and helpful and kind of profound. So I was talking to Krista once with a friend of mine who lost her son when he was just a few weeks old. And my friend asked Krista about this, and Krista said that her son actually chose this intentionally. And it really, in the big eternal picture, was a huge healing experience for both of them. Because in a previous life, they had had a big falling out. And so there was this big gulf between the two of them. But that this act, being born to her and then dying so quickly, created a huge sense of loss and longing, so that when they're reunited again, they'll rush into each other's arms out of love, and it'll be like fireworks, like explosions, and any old negative feelings between them will just be washed away. Now, when I heard that, I was pretty stunned. Now, I'm a pretty creative and imaginative guy, and I never saw an answer like that coming, so I'm impressed by it. And I also think that it's quite beautiful, and regardless of how true or full of shit it might be, it offered my friend the opportunity to reinterpret this horrible experience in her life in a new way, in a positive way. And then, in trying to more fully understand Krista's worldview, it has that same type of internal logic feel that I also recognize and appreciate in Mike's explanation of Mormonism. So, there you go. Now, maybe that'll make sense to you, Logan, and maybe it won't. And Bob, maybe I'm a little bit like Tubal-Cain here, stowing away in your own Noah's Ark, secretly eating all the raw, sleeping animals, just waiting for my chance to hijack the ship and make Jennifer Connelly my own. Or maybe I'm like Aronofsky himself, hijacking the biblical Noah myth and infusing it with quasi-extant magical rock giant ent watchers to add a bit of... what exactly did that add? But see, I told you that the Watchers were part of that Noah story. But guys, you turn the conversation meta, then by all means, let's go meta. Inside baseball, baby. Inside baseball. Anyone for the closing prayer?
You've been listening to If and Stem Throws. If and Stem Throws. If and Stem Throws. If and Stem Throws.
Say, please subscribe to us
Please subscribe to us
on iTunes
on iTunes
and give us feedback.
and give us feedback.
We like 5 stars.
We like 5 stars.
And go to Infants on Thrones.
And go to Infants Throne.
Infants on Thrones.
Yes!
.com.
.com.
That's our website.
Please invite us, because this is me and Daddy speaking. Please listen to us. Goodbye.